Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined as I am every Tuesday by Andrew Erickson. We are talking some buys and sells. What we're going to be doing with the show moving forward, it wasn't what we did last week, but we're going to be splitting this up into a kind of running back centric show. We'll talk some overall, macro level trade strategy in this first part. And then we're gonna have a second part that comes out both on the audio side and on the, video side on YouTube. That will have wide receivers, maybe a small amount of quarterbacks and tight ends as well in that second show. So that's how we're gonna break it up here going forward. So expect this to be a little bit shorter, but you'll get the same amount of content just split up into two individually shorter episodes. We are going to react to Monday Night Football because there was a doubleheader. So there were two games we have to react to here, Erickson. The first one was Bucs beating the Texans 20-19. At the end of the game, very close one, obviously. What were your big takeaways from this one? These are, this is now a 2-0 Bucs team and an 0-2 Texans team. It feels like they're probably closer than that record disparity would suggest. Obviously, the Texans, we had some questions about their offensive line coming into the season. We were curious to see how Ibuka fit into the receiving core on the Bucs side of things. So they were very interesting teams to watch early on. Like I said, Bucs now 2-0, Texans now 0-2. What were your fantasy takeaways from this matchup?
Well, I think that if you're investor of Nico Collins, you are obviously disappointed with the first 2 weeks of the season. And even this past matchup, he had his opportunities. Again, he scored the first touchdown of the game. He had opportunities to score more again later in the game, but him and CJ Stroud were unable to connect. I still think big games are going to come for Nico Collins. I think the offensive line is still, like you said, a work in progress. But this is the first time they really had their guys up front that they wanted to have. In week one, they were already shuffling guys around, moving people. So I don't think it's always going to be necessarily this bad. I think that better games are going to come for Nico Collins. He's still clearly the alpha in this passing game. I mean, there is nobody else that's really stepping up. And I'm honestly surprised that we haven't seen either Iowa State receiver, one of the rookies, either Higgins or Knoll, really do that much. I mean, Higgins had one catch, I believe, that was for a big play. But besides that, they're more than happy to be rolling out players like Xavier Hutchinson, Justin Watson for more snaps, which I think is hurting their offense. I don't understand why they're not going to these explosive rookies to help this offense move the ball and get some pressure off of Nico Collins. So I think the big plays will come to Nico. I would not be writing him off just because he's attached to Stroud. He's that alpha in this passing game. And look, I know Nick Chubb's not the same guy he used to be, but that guy still runs really, really hard. He has really great vision still, and despite running behind a patchwork offensive line, he is grinding out yards after yards. So, although Woody Marks looked like the RB2 last night, Dameon Pierce wasn't inactive. I mean, as long as Chubb is healthy, I don't think we're going to see another running back supplant him. And it was nice to see him catch passes for once.
Yeah, Nico, 9 targets, 24 total passing attempts. That's 37.5% of their passes went towards Nico Collins. He just happened to only catch 3 of them. Still had 52 yards and a touchdown, so it's not like he totally killed you, but he actually barely got me over the mark in our work guillotine league, so I did survive, but, was expecting more from him.
He hasn't had, Nico Collins, what is his claim to fame is the yards after the catch. These big, explosive plays. He just hasn't had any of those yet. So I think that those are going to come, and that's really agnostic from the offensive line, CJ Stroud under pressure. Nico just hasn't had, hey, get the ball in his hands, he's going to break a tackle, and he's going to run 80 yards for a touchdown. So I think that those plays are going to happen for him.
Texans are a good defense, so I'm not sure how much you want to take away in the Tampa side of things. Rachaad White, though, 10 carries for 65 yards, and the long of 16, meaning he was consistently getting chunk yards. It wasn't just carried by one long breakaway, and he had the touchdown as well. Any interest in White, a guy who was really overlooked during draft season?
Yeah, I know that he was coming back from a groin injury that he suffered in the offseason. And it was funny on the broadcast, Troy Aikman kept talking about how Rachaad White was someone that you need to continue to feed carry after carry as he gets stronger in the fourth quarter. And I'm like, really, Troy? Is that Rachaad White? but regardless, Rachaad White did look a lot better. And I think the biggest thing with these Buccaneers running backs overall, both of them were heavily involved in the passing. I believe Bucky Irving had 6 catches. So we love to see that from a PPR perspective. Tristan Wirfs is going to come back. This offensive line is going to get better. And in this particular matchup, they were down more offensive linemen. So it seems like we're dealing with a lot of O-line injuries kind of across the NFL. But I would say that the Buccaneers are on the upswing. I think that Rachaad White, again, just given the running back pool off waivers this week, it's not that great. So I think that Rachaad White, if he's hanging out there, we've seen him be an RB1 before. I'm not sure if he's going to have as much standalone value like he did in this particular matchup, but he did look good. So I did like that. And Egbuka, again, continues to just be a touchdown monster. Although he did have one catch or one target from Baker Mayfield downfield that he didn't come up with, that I was kind of disappointed. With so much attention thrown onto Mike Evans, it just makes it a lot easier for Egbuka to just get high value touches, especially in the end zone.
I want to talk a bit about the late game. I know you being an East Coaster did not really have plans to watch much of, if any, of this game. Did you watch any of it?
Well, no, I watched it this morning when I woke up.
Oh, okay.
I was like, I'm not. I was like, after watching the Buccaneers Texans, I was like, all right, I got to give myself a break. I need to go to sleep.
You did tell me yesterday that there was a 0% chance you were watching this game, so I was assuming that you weren't. But
not
it's good
live.
to hear you
I wasn't gonna watch it live. I watched the replay of it this morning. I don't think I missed much, to be honest.
Well, I want to ask you this: who are you more worried about amongst the rookie running backs in this, Hampton or Genty?
100% Hampton. Easily Hampton would be the guy I'm more concerned about. Because Genty, he still looks as advertised when it comes to tackle breaking. Like, that guy is still breaking tackles every single time he touches the ball. Now, I don't think he's been put in the most advantageous situations in terms of just the Raiders' offensive line opening up space for him. I don't know that I've necessarily loved the two matchups he's had to open up the season, and teams have been trying to be very aggressive to stop the run. So Genty I'm not as concerned about, and even though the snap share was lower in this particular matchup, I think that just had to do with some of the game flow. Dylan Laube was playing for the Raiders in the 2-minute drill, which is why he had 2 catches. Otherwise, he would have he would not have played. So I'm not really concerned about that. Genty's still a rookie. I think that he's still on the upside. Hampton, though, I'm more concerned about because I think that he had his runway here. His first opened of the season where we weren't expecting a lot from Najee because of all the time missed. And I don't want to say Hampton blew his opportunity, but he didn't really give the coaches a reason to, okay, you're the guy, we don't need to feature Najee. He got stuffed at the goal line on 3 different carries, did not score a touchdown. He had a fumble. In a really costly turnover, and this is what gets coaches really, really frustrated. We just haven't seen as much explosiveness like we thought we might see out of him in these first 2 weeks. Again, the matchups have been tougher, but if you're the coaching staff, you're not feeling, oh, well, we need to get Hampton more involved. I don't know if that's necessarily the takeaway from the first 2 weeks of the season. Najee looked a lot better in week 2 versus week 1. He played significantly more snaps as he's getting up to speed. So I feel like now we need to kind of reset our priors where we need to go into the Chargers in week 3 with this backfield thinking about, well, Harris is part of this backfield. Kind of like when we talked about 2 months ago before the Najee Harris fireworks incident, before any of that happened, where we thought, man, Harris is going to be a thorn in the side of Hampton for a while. And it's going to take Hampton to kind of carve out this role in the second half of the season. Well, he had his chance in the first 2 weeks, and that didn't happen. And also, to your point about just Greg Roman offenses, he's just not seeing a lot of targets. That's the other thing. None of these running backs are really being involved heavily in the passing game, which we knew was possible with Greg Roman and his track record. So, definitely of the 2 running backs, Hampton is who I would be more concerned about.
Herbert still looks awesome.
Yes.
On the Raiders side, we're not worried about Bowers at all. I'm not even going to waste time on that for the record. Herbert on the Chargers side looks awesome. Honestly, I would consider putting money down on him to win MVP this year. That's how good I feel like he looks, and I'm really excited about this passing game for this season. When you look at the names in the passing game, obviously Ladd McConkey was the guy we expected, and it's been a lot of Quentin Johnston and a lot of Keenan Allen. Of those two, I know Allen is a lot older, so it might be easier to say the young guy has more of an upside here. But Allen has the chemistry with Herbert and has been there before. Is there one that you prefer over the other moving forward between those two?
It's still Keenan Allen for me. I just love the chemistry he has with Justin Herbert, especially in the red zone. And Quentin Johnston, man, this was also happened last year where it seems like all of his touchdowns, he's just wide open. There's no one around him. He's just running. And look, credit to him. He's improved a lot since his rookie year when it was an absolute disaster. And when you're attached to Justin Herbert, you're going to have opportunities to score big plays. But the week in, week out consistency with Quentin Johnston, if I click him in my starting lineup, I just got to realize, you might be starting a goose egg this week with Quentin Johnston just because that happens. But the upside, again, has been there the last 2 weeks. He's been scoring on a lot of big plays. 3 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. He should actually have 4 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. But Keenan Allen, I think, he is Justin Herbert's go-to guy. And if anything, I think Ladd's kind of a buy low just because he just hasn't been the guy catching the touchdowns. But when you watch the Chargers play, it's he's the best receiver on this team. Like it's because there's so much attention put on Ladd that these other guys are being opened up for touchdowns down the field. So I think Ladd's going to be fine. Don't panic about Ladd McConkey. He would be a guy to buy low just because he hasn't been scoring, even though he has been looking really, really good.
Let's get into our buys and sells show. Again, this kind of part one will be focused mostly on the running backs. I do want to leave the floor open, as we have done with the show in the past, for you to give some kind of higher level, maybe macro level, 30,000 foot view sort of trade strategy and advice from Erickson. Kind of where you're coming in, just in general in terms of you're 2 weeks in. This is no longer overreaction week. This is now we have 2 data points to consider for a lot of these players. This doesn't have to be running back specific, even though this is the running back show. But what is your sort of, like I said, 30,000 foot view strategy advice for trades right now at this point in the season?
I think you got to take a strong look at your team and kind of ask yourself, okay, right now with this current roster, am I a contender or a pretender? Especially if you're 0-2 or 2-0. Sometimes your record can lie, because you also have to look at, okay, where am I in points scored or points against? Because sometimes you might be 9th in points scored, but 10th in points against. So you're sitting at 2-0, but you're probably not actually 2-0. So I think that can help dictate how aggressive you want to be with trades. So necessarily you don't have to blow things up if you're 0-2, but your team is actually good and you just kind of had run into some bad matchups. Vice versa, if you are 2-0, but you have not been scoring that many points, you've been kind of getting lucky, well, regression's probably going to come your way sooner rather than later. So that's how I would approach it. And in terms of who to target for other managers, look, a lot of quarterbacks are going to have gotten hurt this past week. So a lot of people are looking for waivers for quarterbacks. Maybe if you play in a league where people have two quarterbacks rostered, those are the managers to kind of approach with deals with quarterbacks potentially. Either you're trading them a quarterback and then you're going to play quarterback off the waiver wire. So something to keep in mind, because I think that if you had Joe Burrow, if you had Jayden Daniels, like you may be looking to make a move because, oh man, I might be not having my quarterback this week. How do I make adjustments if I don't want to go to the waiver wire, if I don't get the quarterback I want off waivers, just depending on what kind of league it is. So those are kind of some things I'm thinking about as I'm making trades this week.
Don't forget about our weekly trade live stream on our YouTube channel where you can come and ask your specific fantasy trade questions. We'll be with you every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. For those listening on the podcast, just go to youtube.com/fantasypros, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified of all of our weekly live streams. Let's jump into our running backs to buy. Erickson, who's your number one for us?
I'm going to go with Breece Hall. He was someone that we talked about a little bit last week, and I think that you presented me the question, Omarion Hampton or Breece Hall. And I was on the Breece Hall side, although it was close. I probably feel a little bit better about it now just because of the way that we talked about with Hampton already. But Breece Hall, I think you can get him now after just the Jets offense just was terrible in week 2 against the Bills. It wasn't just Breece Hall that was a mess. The Jets collectively were a mess entirely. But the thing that we were afraid about with Breece Hall, not really related to the Jets part, just their offense having potential down games, which is always going to happen when Justin Fields is your quarterback. But it was the committee. Okay, how much is Braylon Allen going to be involved? Is he going to take over this backfield? Well, we've seen 2 weeks of this backfield, and it has been clearly Breece Hall as the number one running back, and these other guys, Isaiah Davis and Braylon Allen, as just that. Really like other guys. So in week 2, 64% snap share, still had 12 touches. And Braylon Allen, yes, he did score a touchdown in week 1, but he's been wildly inefficient through 2 weeks. 12.5 success rate, which is the lowest among any running back with at least 8 carries through the first 2 weeks of this season. So Hall is the Jets RB1, and I'm not going to do the Men in Black thing where I just completely erase from my mind what I saw from Breece Hall in week 1 when he looked absolutely fantastic. So I think that this week 2 dud gives you an opportunity to buy low on Breece Hall just because he was so discounted throughout draft season. I think that week 1 ceiling is still firmly in play. And I think that the Justin Fields injury maybe even gives you an even better opportunity to get Breece Hall on your roster because honestly, I don't think that the offense for the Jets is going to crumble if Tyrod Taylor is the starter. He's a veteran guy. Like he can move the offense. And I think that he knows he has to feature Breece Hall. So Breece Hall would be one of my guys that I would buy low on. And, week 3 is tough against the Bucs, but after that it's Dolphins and Cowboys. So 2 matchups I like for Breece Hall.
So maybe wait till after week 3 and get him for an even lower price, or just get out ahead of it and get him now?
I mean, look, I think that something that is always going to be tough is when is the perfect time to buy and sell players. I don't think that you're ever going to be always 100% right, hitting in on the exact week. I don't think that it's the worst thing in the world to be a week too early, because you can't be a week too late, where it's like you missed the window entirely. So you could wait, till week 4, but the other manager might know that too. Be like, oh, let's play the Dolphins this week. I'm not going to trade Breece Hall. So like that's something you have to keep in mind. So I just want Breece Hall on my roster just because what I saw in week 1. And I was so impressed by that I just want to get him on my team.
He's RB12 in our consensus rest of season rankings. Is that too high, too low, or just right?
I like that. I think that's a good ranking for him. I think that's right where I have him as well. So yeah, I like that.
Who's your next running back to buy?
So my next running back to buy here, I need to actually find him on here. Oh, so TreVeyon Henderson. So I had him on my list last week, and that was because I thought that he led the team in touches, even though he didn't lead the team in snaps played. Now he's coming off another down week where just 4 carries for 10 yards. He had 2 catches for 30 receiving yards. And it was a lot of Ramondre Stevenson. Like, Stevenson really stole the show for the New England Patriots in week 2, and deservedly so. He looked significantly better than he did in week 1, where it looked like he was running with cement in his shoes. That was not the case in week 2 against the Miami Dolphins. And I know that this has been really frustrating for a lot of managers that are invested in TreVeyon Henderson. I think that just what his role is in this offense, he's never going to be a bell cow. I think that's going to make him volatile just from week to week. And that was something that we talked about a little bit. I know probably a couple months ago we did a show where I talked about TreVeyon Henderson being overvalued, but then hook, line, and sinker, you see him in the preseason, you just always fall for it. You're like, oh my God, this guy looks so explosive, I got to move him up. So even I didn't necessarily stick to my guns with thinking about how Henderson could be overvalued just based on his role. But this situation reminds me a lot of the Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, his rookie year. He was outside the top 30 running backs in points per game during that first 6 weeks of the season because there was another running back getting a lot of usage. So I think for me, Henderson is just a buy on the talent, especially in the full PPR. We know that he's going to catch a lot of passes, and I like the upcoming schedule here for the New England Patriots. They're playing the Steelers, the Panthers, the Bills, and the Saints. Those are their next 4 matchups. I think that there's some good matchups there for running backs to thrive. And I know that Henderson still has a very high ceiling, especially on a weekly basis. So right now with managers is really frustrated. I think it's actually the price that has me most into trying to buy on TreVeyon Henderson now.
I was going to ask that. Sorry to interrupt you, but like, what do you think it would cost? Because this is somebody that had so much hype by the end of August. Like, he was a 4th round pick in real-time ADP on FantasyPros by the time we got to the final draft weekend of the year. As a rookie who wasn't like clearly going to be the bell cow, there has to be a lot of helium for him to get to inside the top 50 picks. From drafters. He's now RB23 rest of season in the consensus rankings. What do you think would be a reasonable price for him?
A couple guys that we might talk about later as sells, but some veteran players, I think. What about James Conner? Would that work?
They're back-to-back in rest of season rankings.
So, yeah, that's a deal that I would make. And I think that you just have to keep in mind that, James Conner probably has more value in week 3, if you're starting him for that particular week. But we're not playing to just win week 3. We're playing to win in the second half of the season, during the fantasy championships, during the fantasy playoffs. I think Henderson is going to have a more substantial role when it comes to the Patriots offense then versus what he has right now. So that's just something to keep in mind with a lot of these rookie running backs is, maybe a lot of them haven't fired like we thought they might from the get-go, but I think that they're going to improve as the season progresses. So if you didn't draft any of these guys and you're looking for that second half ceiling and upside, I think this is a great time to go and strike as they come out of the gates a little bit slower and sluggish than I think a lot of us anticipated.
We are extremely excited to announce our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. Everybody knows and loves the Hard Rock hotels and casinos, and now you can use the top-rated Hard Rock Bet sportsbook to place your bets all NFL season and beyond. Hard Rock Bet is the only legal sportsbook in the state of Florida and is also available in Arizona, Ohio, New Jersey, Indiana, Tennessee, Virginia, Illinois, and Colorado, with more states launching all the time. You can also play on Hard Rock Bet's online casino. If you are in New Jersey, from here on out, you'll start to see us use Hard Rock Bet lines when we're talking about the games. So as we gear up for NFL season, sign up for Hard Rock Bet, make a $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Head over to Hard Rock Bet, sign up, and make your first deposit today. buy. Let's go to the running backs to sell. Your first one here, Erickson, is Chase Brown. And I want to ask you before, or you can save it for part of your description if you want, but he's very closely ranked to Breece Hall. And I wanted to ask you, would you sell Chase Brown to get Breece Hall? Is that a trade you would make?
Yes, that is a trade that I would make. I would sell Chase Brown to get Breece Hall. And I think that the Bengals situation just deserves a lot of conversation. Now we have confirmation that Joe Burrow is probably going to miss the rest of the season. It's possibly comes back week 16 or week 17 from this injury.
He might not miss the rest of the NFL season, depending on what their record is. He is going to miss the rest of the fantasy season, essentially.
Yeah, so everything Bengals related has to be with the idea that Jake Browning is going to be the quarterback for the rest of the season. And that's what has me concerned about Chase Brown. So he leads all running backs so far this season in fantasy points scored below expectation. And if you have him on your roster, you probably know that because it's been tough sledding so far for Chase Brown. It's not a usage problem. Like, he's getting a lot of carries. He's getting a lot of targets. But the Bengals offensive line, there's a reason why Joe Burrow's hurt. The offensive line is an absolute disaster and has done no favors for Chase Brown to try to help him in terms of his rushing efficiency. So he's 6th worst in rushing success rate, 2.4 yards per carry through 2 weeks. And I want to cut him some slack because I know it's not his fault, because he's averaging 3.6 yards after contact per attempt. So Chase Brown is doing everything in his power to try to churn out yardage, but I just don't think that it's going to get easier for him without Joe Burrow in this lineup. Like, that was one thing that we knew going into this year, that the Bengals did have a below offensive line. Like, that was a consensus take if you just looked at any of the offensive line rankings. But when you have Joe Burrow as your quarterback, you're really not as concerned about it because, well, their offensive line is always kind of like below average. But now this is kind of like the worst case scenario where they lose that quarterback that can help kind of mitigate and overcome those offensive line issues. I'm just not as confident that Browning is going to be able to do that. Even in this game against the Jaguars, he was constantly under pressure. He threw 3 interceptions, right? Because he's always got pressure in his face. So I think that if teams are looking to limit him and force him into passing situations, well, then Chase Brown, I just don't see the same type of ceiling I thought that he would have with Joe Burrow healthy under center. So I know that if you look back at the last time Browning played games, they did lean on Joe Mixon a lot in those situations. So I think there is a case to be made where you can still sell Chase Brown because there may be managers who think, well, they're just going to lean on the running game and they're going to feed Chase Brown. But on the other side of the coin is, well, defenses know that. So if you can push Chase Brown out of your team just based on the idea, well, now they're going to feature him a lot. Like, you should you can take him off my hands. That's probably the idea of me selling on a guy like Chase Brown. Now, again, things can change. Maybe Jake Browning plays a little bit higher or above more expectation than we think. But for me, the ancillary pieces, the non-Jamar Chase players on this Bengals offense, I do have concerns about.
Where is he rest of season for you?
I think that I have him outside the top 20 running backs.
He's someone that I'm trying That's much lower than consensus.
If week 3 comes and it's a disaster for this Bengals offense, then he's gonna plummet, even if he's seeing high end usage. So that's where I get concerned about him, and especially because he's been inefficient.
The names that he's around in the consensus from all the experts across the industry rest of season rankings: Travis Etienne, Kyron Williams, Omarion Hampton, Kenneth Walker, Chuba Hubbard, Alvin Kamara, Javonte Williams. Do you want all those names over him?
I think for the most part, yeah. I'd have to look at my exact rest of season rankings, but I think that he's in that area. I don't think that, it's weird as it sounds to think that, yeah, I'd rather have Javonte, I'd rather have Travis Etienne over Chase Brown at this point. Those guys have been excellent through 2 weeks, and their situations are much, much better than they are for Chase Brown. So I hate to kind of like throw the white flag for Chase Brown, a player that I really liked in draft season, but I just think that the equation has changed so dramatically without Joe Burrow, and just the fact that Brown has been efficient through 2 games. I think that we need to adjust expectations. So he's someone that I would be trying. And because you listed him off in all of those other names, I think that you can get a deal done where you can trade him and still get a solid return.
Who's your other running back to sell? It's a name you mentioned earlier.
Yep, James Conner for me. So he's on the sell list for a second straight week, just because I think that the time is ticking, right? For you to sell high on James Conner. We know the injury track record with him. He's constantly banged up. So the bet on drafting James Conner as a round 5 type of player was, okay, he's going to give me a lot of early season production, but then it's going to tail off. And I still think that was a fine process based on where you drafted him. But we're seeing Trey Benson get way more involved than I really anticipated. In week 1, he was more involved. And then in week 2, we saw James Conner just have 12 carries for 34 yards, 1 rushing touchdown. He had 1 catch for 18 yards. This was against the Carolina Panthers. James Conner's had 2 absolute smash matchups to start the year between the Saints and the Panthers, and he really hasn't done like that much. Now, he's scored touchdowns in both matchups, which have kind of salvaged his fantasy production. But in terms of yardage, in terms of what he's done on the ground efficiency, it has not been good. So he's averaging 3.2 yards per carry. He has a bottom 5 rushing success rate this season. And Trey Benson has been getting more involved. Last week, Conner, 55% snap rate. Trey Benson played a career high 44% snap rate, which was actually an increase from week 1. So James Conner hasn't been efficient. He hasn't taken advantage of these great matchups, and the team is more open to getting Trey Benson more involved, especially as a receiver out of the backfield. So I believe that he saw 5+ targets in week 2. So those are the reasons why I'm concerned about James Conner in the long term, and I think that you should cash out now while he has coming off games where he has scored touchdowns back-to-back weeks. So that's it for me with James Conner, especially if the schedule gets a little bit tougher. 49ers and Seahawks up next for the Arizona Cardinals. 2 much tougher run defenses than what they face between Carolina and New Orleans.
Shout out to Sonos for supporting today's show, whether it's a Monday night where I'm sitting home watching the football games, or I'm flipping back and forth between all the games on Sunday, or even college football on Saturdays. If I want to feel like I'm in the game, there's only one way to do it, and that's the sound of Sonos. Whether it is on the go with the headphones or the home theater experience, nothing takes you into the event live, feeling like you're in the stadium like Sonos. And I'm telling you right now, if you care about sound, you care about the experience of your sports, of your movies, Sonos is for you. It delivers incredible studio quality, and it makes it easy to really enjoy and enhance all of your entertainment levels. Take them to the next level. The home theater system I've got in my house, let me tell you something. It is next level. It's easy to set up. Sometimes those things are complicated. Sonos is not. They make it easy to up your experience level. And I'm telling you right now, the Sonos soundbar, way better than the old one I used to have. So much better. The Ace headphones too. You want to talk about quality. You want to talk about battery life. Up to 30 hours of battery. You get 3 hours of playback with a 3-minute charge. That's incredible. So right now, I want you to visit Sonos.com to learn more and explore the full Sonos lineup. Because if you're serious about great sound for football, for podcasts, for music, whatever it might be, you've got to check out Sonos. Again, visit Sonos.com to learn more and explore the full lineup: headphones, sound bars, home theater systems. Sonos has you covered. And now, back to the action.
Let's do some buy, sell, or hold. I've got 3 different running back trios for you here. This first one, like, obviously these are all players that are like you're just happy to have on your team, but I wanted to have a little fun with some big names here. So, clearly nobody's looking to like completely dump these guys, but you have to pick one to buy, one to sell, one to hold. Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, Devon Achane.
Ooh, I like this one. This is a good one. Okay, I'm gonna buy Jonathan Taylor. I think that what we're seeing from the Colts offense, with him operating as a full-blown bell cow, he played 93% of the snaps last week. You don't see that a lot from running backs, especially with Jonathan Taylor, where he usually comes off the field for passing downs. Like, that hasn't been the case. Like, he's been more involved in the passing game. So I'm going to buy high on Jonathan Taylor. Let's see. In terms of selling, I think it's got to be Achane.
The injury risk.
I think that he, to me, I wrote this up in my Beyond Waiver Wire article for week 3. Like, he does kind of profile as like a sneaky like buy because he's looked fantastic. He's so heavily used in the receiving game. But if things just really get out of hand in Miami with coaching firings or etc., then you could see things going south for him. Whereas with Jacobs, I mean, he's going to score. He scored 11 touchdowns or 11. He's scored in 11 straight games or something ridiculous. He just feels so safe. Where if I have Josh Jacobs, I'm just going to be happy that I have him on my team. He scores touchdowns every single week. The Packers love to feature him. He's on a good offense. So yeah, I think I would just keep Jacobs. Achane would probably be the sell for me.
Next trio here: Javonte Williams, DeAndre Swift, Jordan Mason. Again, Javonte, DeAndre, and Jordan Mason. Okay,
so I'm definitely selling DeAndre Swift. He's already fine. He was someone I was thinking about putting on for my RB sells. I just know he's not going to hold this job all year long. It's in my bones. He fumbled last week, and I know that the competition for him is just not there, but I think they're going to find ways to get Kyle Monangai more involved. So I think that Swift would be the sell for me. I think Javonte would probably be the buy because he is a bell cow for the Dallas Cowboys. And there is no one else that's trying there to usurp him. If Miles Sanders is still the RB2 in this offense. Like, Jaden Blue has been a healthy and active the last 2 weeks. Like, so they're not sold on Jaden Blue being the running back that's going to be a factor in this backfield. And we know that Javonte's clearly ahead of Miles Sanders. So Javonte's looked fantastic through 2 games. So Javonte would be the buy for me. Jordan Mason, I think, is the hold. I guess you could probably maybe figure him as a sell because Aaron Jones is hurt now. But as someone that invested a lot in Jordan Mason, like, I'm just going to hold. Like, this is why I drafted him, because I thought that there was intrinsic upside if there was a injury to Aaron Jones, and now that's playing out. So it's not ideal that McCarthy's injured now, and the offensive line has a bunch of injuries as well. But Carson Wentz, Jordan Mason, and Kevin O'Connell we trust. Let's roll with Jordan Mason.
Last trio here, buy, sell, or hold: Jaylen Warren, Cam Skattebo, Bhayshul, Tuten.
Buying all of the Bhayshul Tuten stock. If he's not already on my team, I'm trying to get him on my team. and this isn't to knock Etienne, because I think that he's looked really good as well, but Tuten just checked off every single box I was looking for in week 2 when he was out there catching screen passes, scoring touchdowns, looking super explosive, because that's what he is. And as great as Etienne has looked, he doesn't have the best track record of staying healthy in the second half of the season when he has a lot of touches. So that's just something to keep in mind. That I know that we all kind of talked about Tuten being this year's Bucky Irving, but so far it's looking like that's still possibly in play with what he looks like rest of season. So he would be the buy for me. I think Cam Skattebo is the hold. I think that what we saw from him taking over the backfield ahead of Tyrone Tracy just in the second week of the season, I think that's something to be excited about. And then the last running back, who did you say it was? He's the sell for me. Who is it?
It was Jaylen Warren, Cam Skattebo, Bhayshul, Tuten.
I guess by default it is Jaylen Warren. That would be the sell for me, although I don't think that... I think it's probably because you can get a lot for Jaylen Warren. Not to say that I think that he's not going to sustain this, because right now, I mean, Caleb Johnson is just like so buried in the Mike Tomlin doghouse, which is really unfortunate because I like Caleb Johnson as a fit in this scheme. And maybe it changes later on down the road, but not until like the Steelers have their bye week, which is in week 5, in week 6, that we could see something change for Caleb Johnson. So I think in the short term, Jaylen Warren has a lot of value. I think that eventually they will get Caleb Johnson more involved, but it could be a while for that to happen. So this is probably something to keep in the back of your head of, okay, now maybe I should look to move on from Jaylen Warren at some point. But right now, he is a guy that has a lot of value and should be starting most weeks.
Don't forget about our weekly trade live stream on our YouTube channel. You can come and ask your specific fantasy trade questions. We'll be with you every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. For those listening on the podcast, just go to youtube.com/fantasypros, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified of all of our weekly live streams. For Erickson, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to check out part 2 when it comes out, either on audio or video. We'll see you next time.